Hey guys, welcome back to Beauty and Gratitude. I have an amazing makeup artist and dear friend, Jimmy Cortes. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. What a pleasure to be here with you.
It looks beautiful there. Is that light or is that coming from the window in Barcelona?
No, we do have a window door right there, but at this time it's 7 p.m. and it's starting to get dark that we
Okay,
had to do it with artificial lighting.
it's
But it,
beautiful.
it is kind of the light source that we come in
Yeah.
with our apartment that faces the plaza, in Barcelona, a small plaza.
Mm,
The side of Barcelona by the hill of Montjuic. So we're in the center, but just tucked in a little corner that still has that kind of village feel.
yes,
And it was a lovely transition from, New York City.
being on top of
Yeah.
everybody. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this has similarities that, still those buildings, people do live mainly in buildings versus
Hmm.
houses in this kind of city.
Hmm.
Um, but, just a lot less millions,
Yes, yes.
um, and just slower pace. And like I said, just this being tucked away off of one of these main roads because the roads go one ways. And so people just don't even go here because they get lost in these one ways and they can't get out. So they almost avoid it. So it's nice being tucked away here.
Yes, one thing about Europe is that the buildings are a lot older than here in the US. So
Yeah.
how old are the buildings in your area? Are they hundreds of years
Uh,
or
yeah, turn of the century,
okay.
1850s are the oldest, and and then, but in the in the 20s there was a huge build,
Mhm.
and then in the Olympics in '92, it's when
Yeah,
Barcelona did its major transformation,
yeah.
um, and you see the remnants, and it's just beautiful. It's they opened up the beach. Before it was a seawall,
I
but it
remember that.
wasn't like, yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't beaches. And
Mhm.
since the Olympics, they've made it beach at the footsteps. It's
Oh
crazy how
wow,
close to it, yeah, to the center. You could just walk right into the sand.
that's beautiful.
Um,
That's
yeah,
beautiful. Especially at
yeah.
night, if you take a night stroll, that can be amazing.
It
Yes,
is. It is. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, everything is locked out now because of
yes,
COVID. They've been quite strict, and as they should be. Safety first, and we just need to get through this, and we'll see, light at the end of the tunnel eventually.
yes. I wish Americans would listen to this, and they will.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's hard. Lockdown I can do. I have mask. I am good about social distance. But the main thing for me, I hate that I can't travel, that I can't
Yeah.
go to Barcelona or to Paris or wherever, Africa or Asia. It
Yeah.
just makes it really hard to know that you're truly locked down for a
Yeah.
while. But I know it's for a greater good,
Yeah.
for a greater good. So I want to,
But
mm-hmm.
no,
Were
but
you
just
saying?
how lucky we are that we live in this age that we could do this,
Yes,
being
yes.
Barcelona, LA, and we could still communicate and see each other.
That's the
Like
blessing. Yes.
we grew up in the '80s, and that wasn't in the
No,
case then. So like, this was Star Trek stuff.
I know. I could send you a smoke signal. And,
Exactly, exactly.
you know,
So it's feel blessed for just the
exactly.
age that we live in. That
That's true.
with my parents, we're far away, but we've never been closer because we talk
Hmm.
more now than ever. So, you know, there's always silver lining.
There is. That's very true.
Yeah.
And speaking of your parents, I know, are they in Cuba or are they in the US?
No, they're in the US. Yeah, they came in 1970,
Okay.
and shortly after I was born in 1973.
Okay.
Um, and in Miami, Florida, it was my father's side
Hmm.
family in Cuba. They had a meeting. I always picture it because there's 14 brothers and sisters, and they
Wow.
all they all met and they said, we're leaving as a family, and they made a plan. They I don't know how they rigged the order and who goes first and all that, and everybody helped each other out, and 2 decades later, eventually everybody uh, ended up in Miami, and it started at the nucleus with my grandmother, and then everybody lived, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, and it was Pequeña Havana, and it really felt
That's beautiful.
like a small Havana. I know I went to Cuba for the first time when I was 8 years old in 1980, and different. Cuba is much older, and what was going through, but there was a certain freedom that I experienced there that we didn't have living in the city of Miami, because there was so many less cars and less dangers. Me and my cousins, I had several cousins my age, and running around in the streets, without that fear of your cars, you're gonna get hit. In Miami, your parents are always worried about you, and so it was great, eye opener to be that young and experience such a different culture, going through a radically different experience, and at that point, most of my mother's family was still there. She only had 3 sisters in Miami, so we stayed in that grandmother's house. But just that family experience, finally getting to meet cousins and aunts and uncles that you hear them talking on the phone loudly. Hello.
Right.
Yeah, and then finally getting to meet them, it was a beautiful experience, a treasure that
Yes. And you've been back there often, right? You've gone back now.
I did the math one time, and it accidentally happened almost like every 8 or 9 years.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, without officially planning it, Yeah, there was still family there, and then I wanted to go and travel Cuba, because before I would only travel to see my family and stay with my family. And then I was like, okay, I've been to Cuba enough, but I want to see the rest of the island.
Right.
And so one of my cousins, around my age, he took a week off, and we did like a tour of the island.
Wow.
And that was great, Not a backpacking experience, but just a couple of things in the car, and get to know him, get to know Cuba.
Yes.
The mountains, just being so different from Miami. At that point, I only knew Miami.
Right. Right.
So crossing that 90-mile straits made such a big difference to finally reconnect with your family members.
That's amazing. My friend's son and daughter, I think she had just finished college. This is recent. And they're not from Cuba. They're actually Chinese and Puerto Rican. But they wanted to have an experience together as brother and sister. So they chose Cuba. And they did exactly what you did. They got in a car. They went to Havana first. But then from there, they drove around the whole island and had experiences and photos that I'd never seen from anyone else, From the horseback riding to eating in the little restaurants along the road to the waterfalls, the mountains, name it. It was really beautiful to see. It was really beautiful to see. So it's a very rich island in that way, and the people.
It is. And it's continuously evolving, as you can imagine, change of government and all that. And it gets better, it gets worse, it gets better, it gets worse, and but yeah, that trip was in the 91. I think it was there was a hurricane that hit Miami, and I wanted to 91 or 92, right? And I wanted to extend my stay, but because of the hurricane, I got extended anyway, because you couldn't fly back. So it was like great. And so I got to enjoy it more. And it keeps evolving, it keeps changing, all the little bed and breakfasts now that are
I can't wait
for
to
the
visit.
tours.
Wow.
So you feel like you're living, in somebody's home and, connecting. It's always been, very welcoming and gracious, don't have much to offer you, but they're offer the little cafecito, and let's talk, let's have a conversation. It was a time when the lights used to go off around 8 o'clock, and so that's what you did. You just gather with the family and tell stories and jokes, and You know,
Wow.
we didn't do that in Miami because in Miami at that time, everybody goes to the room
Busy.
watching
Yeah.
TV, you know, yeah. But, you
Yeah.
know, I think the TV at that age, you know, like, you know, everybody was getting TVs in their own room, and it just started, you know, after dinner, everybody to
To
your own
start.
little channel. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so it was good experience for me.
Well, I know for Cuba, there's a lot of art around the island. And then, of course, coming into Miami, New Jersey, New York, I know a lot of Cubans and
Yeah.
a lot of talented Cuban people that are photographers, makeup artists, artists. When did you know that you wanted to be an artist and eventually a makeup artist?
You know, as a kid, I think in third grade was a point that an art teacher wrote a letter to my mom saying, your son, it's above average, you should
Mhm.
like harness his artistic creativity,
Yeah.
buy him sketchbooks instead of coloring books, encourage him to draw. If you could enroll him in an art class or
That's
something, that would be
wonderful.
great.
Wow.
But I remember my parents did, and
Mhm.
but at that time, it was a little old Cuban lady, and it was like three other students, and it was like three lemons on the table. And I guess that wasn't exciting to me. So I did a couple
Yeah.
of classes, and I know how much it was for my parents to like, pay
Mhm.
for these extra classes. So I said, you know what, save the money, and
Mhm.
because at that point I always like drawing and sketching and doodling and more than anything being creative, like during Christmas time, the trees,
Right.
and decorating them, and when I got older, it was like every year a different style, and so it
Yes.
was always about the creativity. um, and it was in high school, I had a friend of my brother. My brother is 8 years older,
Oh, wow.
and she said, when you get to Miami High, it's a big school. Um, it's around 4,000 students, so
Oh, wow. Wow.
for all the grades. And she goes, a good thing to do is join the marching band,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you get to school 2 weeks before everybody else with like 200 to 300 kids from all the grades. So you
Right.
have 2 weeks to get to know. So when your
Mm.
first day at school at this big school, you already know 250 people,
Wow. Wow.
and what a blast, when you're, at that age, and this big new school, but everybody's there for the same purpose, and
Mhm.
it was slash and have fun. Everybody really
Right.
enjoyed themselves. It was,
Right.
they try to put, strict orders, and, but it was, some of my good friends are still from
Wow.
those, that
Yes.
first marching band experience. And she said that, and take a drama class, it'll help you,
Boop.
you know,
Yes.
just express yourself, and,
Yeah.
because in junior high, there wasn't, they had a drama maybe during English class or something like that, but they didn't really have, they might have
Right.
had a drama club, but
Right.
but she
Right.
said in high school, definitely do it. And there's Miss Marty Hancock, that
Yeah.
I didn't do it my freshman year because as you get older, you could pick more electives. So I
Right.
did it
Right.
my second year. But I remember that first year because of a good friend of mine, Michael Givens, that he was a senior, and we were playing trumpet in marching band, and we would sit next to each other. And he was no good either, and I was a beginner as well. So we became best buddies. And he was doing something for the Christmas show, and he's like, come and help me, and
Right.
so that first year, at least I helped out doing the Christmas show, and it was always these big spectaculars. And
Yes.
since then I got hooked, like I wasn't in drama that year, but I was so involved that, by
In a
that second
production.
year,
Yes.
yeah. And,
We're
with
very
stage manager
similar.
and lighting. Yeah.
We're very similar. I went to a performing arts high school. Second
Yeah.
year, I did vocal, dance.
Okay.
And when I finally got into an art class, I was like, oh, I really like this. And I was
Yeah.
an AP biology English student in high
Uh-huh.
school. And I remember telling my biology teacher that I was no longer going to take her class because I'm more interested in art and I'm going to pursue
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
And she cried. She literally cried.
Oh.
She goes, I produce young doctors. That's what she said to me. I produce young doctors, and you're going to need anatomy anyway in art. I say, "Yeah, that's true." So I moved
Okay.
on to leaned more into art, but ironically, 360 now in my life, I'm studying psychology of all things and leaning
Okay.
more towards therapy um, and art because I think our experiences as makeup artists, we meet so many people
Yeah,
and we become the therapist.
we do. I mean, just being that good ear and, you
Yeah,
know,
yes,
that calming presence, before they go out there,
exactly.
uh, knowing how to read them, do they want chat? Do they not want chat?
Yes, yes,
Some people have nerves that they want to get their mind distracted.
that's
So
true.
it's, that learning how to read people, when you first meet them,
That's
and
true.
then in shows like I was on Wicked, for
Hmm.
several years. So, when you get to a show, uh, eight times a week,
Oh yeah.
it's
Oh
a
yeah.
different kind of relationship, and
Very intimate. Very
yeah,
intimate.
very
Yeah.
intimate, yeah. And then
So,
you bring it back to the art, at that
right.
point, once you start doing something so repetitively, then it's like start being efficient. How could I make it pop? What's cleaner?
Yes.
And it was fun to make it a challenge. When you do have to do something 8 times a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I was going to ask is like from high school, you did you fall into makeup then, or did it happen shortly after?
Yeah, no, makeup was not on the radar at all. It was costume design. I was
Ah,
doing, backstage, stage managing. I did some set building, and I liked being kind of in that side. And I did a costume design for the thespians, the high school thespian
yes.
troops.
Hmm.
And I did for the competitions, the regionals and state. And I like the idea of going back in history, reading the play, um, the scenes that talk about costumes or not, and costume is always linked with hair and makeup. So at that point, it was introduced, but it was costume design that
Okay.
introduced me into that world. And I went to School of the Arts in North Carolina
Okay. Okay.
as a costume design major.
Oh, wow.
And my first year there was their first year of having a wig and makeup, degree program. And it was one of our classes as a costume design major.
Hmm.
You had all your art classes, but then costume history, and then wigs and makeup.
Yeah.
Um, um, and it felt like I was playing. I was like, it was too much fun. And I was like, when things come that easy, the makeup, it was like back to the drawing that, I had put
It
down.
should. It
And the
should.
hair was sculptural. And I was like, what? Because the
Hmm.
sewing, I know that you need your base of
Right.
sewing, but they were just training you to be a good stitcher, a good,
Right.
costumer,
Right. Right.
just machine, 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 machine.
Hmm.
And when they told me that the first time you get to design a show at school was your third year,
Oh.
I was like, I wasn't really enjoying all that. Just, so, we had like you had different shows every term, and when I got to do like the millinery, that was interest
Okay.
me. The hats and the wire and the steaming because of the sculptural.
Mhm.
And one time a special designer came and we were like doing these kimonos, and she wanted to come up with like some hair texture that's not hair
Right.
in my costume design credit class. And I had come up with this special thing with this gauzy fabric, keep on twisting it. She goes, I love it, I love it, And so, that became one of that. And so it wasn't fun doing that and mask, So I like the creative, crafty, hands tactile. Um, so after that first year, I switched majors to wigs and
Okay.
makeup.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good. Yes.
because I realized that since it was a new course and a lot less students, you get your hands in it much faster, and start
Sure.
designing. And within that first year, that Christmas, I was already doing Nutcracker,
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Wow.
So that career started in wigs and makeup,
That's great.
doing
Wow.
Nutcracker at School of the Arts. Again, some good friends, from those years at the ballet world.
Wow.
And then opera was a little bit there.
Mhm.
The thing that opera came about after, the degree of wigs and makeup,
Right.
opera is one of the few that really uses wigs and makeup,
Yeah.
character makeup. So if
Yes.
you really wanted to use, those skills, opera was the best. And it was a Santa Fe opera, it was one of
Hmm.
those summer, that amazing, beautiful landscapes,
Yes. Wow.
Um, and so that's how I started. I did one summer apprentice. My first one was in Chautauqua Opera.
Okay.
Uh, Interesting. Do you know it? Upstate New
I
York.
know. I'm like, Chautauqua. It
It's
sounds
really, yeah. It's in
American.
Chautauqua
Okay.
Lake, upstate New York, close to the Canadian border,
Oh, wow.
and it's this enclosed little town.
Oh,
You
wow.
need your badge to get in and out. So it's like very
Really?
safe. Yeah, yeah. But everything is kind of Victorian or Victorian-esque. I don't know how old but it looked like a picture perfect dull little village with a town
Wow.
square with the church and the library, and like it was
I'm gonna look it
a
up.
bit
Oh.
spooky but amazing. And then they had this art festival in the summers that did
Hmm.
dance and theater and opera, and so you had all these creatives coming together. And at that point it was an apprenticeship program, so
Okay.
you're all these, I was housed with all these apprentices, the singers, from the singers to stage managers, everybody in these houses.
Hmm.
And for the first time seeing the stars, I've been from Miami,
Yes.
you don't really have stars there because it's so bright. And
Hmm.
going upstate New York, and when it got dark,
It's magical.
lying on those picnic tables looking out, it was amazing. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was
Yes.
amazing.
Wow.
So that was my first kind of opera
Hmm.
experience. And Linda Nye, she was the in charge
Hmm.
headmistress there. And, she said, why are you going back to school? You're
Good
good.
for her. I
You're
like that.
good.
Good for
Yeah.
her. Yes.
But I only had the 1 year at that point, I only had that 1 year, and I felt like, oh, I think I need more,
Okay. Okay.
I, to learn prosthetics, like there was more to learn.
Right. True.
So I ended up doing just 1 more year at school. I
Mhm.
went 1 more year, and then
Okay.
that second summer, I got accepted at the Santa Fe Opera Summer Festival, which
Beautiful.
is amazing,
Beautiful.
amazing.
Wow.
And taking the drive, I
Mhm.
drove from Miami to Santa Fe,
Oh,
racing
wow.
the sun. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And then from there, the head, Stephen Bryant there,
Mhm.
he asked me to assist him in his regular gig, which is a Virginia Opera in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, so we went, did like a 7.5 month season. So like a nice
Wonderful.
solid season. And it was, honestly, it was a few years with him and Jason Allen. And it was like one of the best years, it was like just being creative. And then on our off time, he would send us off to tour and like
Mhm.
just, box of wigs and go to, Grand Rapids,
Right.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, Carolina Opera,
Yes.
so it was interesting having that kind of pre-tour life before I got to New York,
Yeah. You had a good start. You
setting
had a
up, yeah, yeah, I
yeah.
had
Wow.
a good training there.
Yes.
Um, but after Virginia, I was like, I don't know if I want to be in Norfolk. It felt like
Right.
an odd city to end up being so
Yeah.
young. And I mean, him and his husband had a beautiful house. So,
Mhm.
uh, but I felt I wanted to continue and see what else is out there. I wanted to
Smart.
give Miami. I wanted to give Miami a shot. To see if it
Okay.
was possible to work in Miami. And I
Mhm.
tried that for a year, and I think that year I made $13,000. So not a lot
Jeez.
of work there, but I was still doing those gigs to Tulsa, Grand Rapids, and
Okay.
And in one of those trips, one of the sopranos, Gwen Geyer, and
Mhm.
she lived in New York,
Yes.
and you know, by the end of the season, you know, like you said, you know, when you're so intimate, you become, you know, just so comfortable. And you know, she asked me, listen, I'm gonna go away for the summer to Germany on one of the fests, and I have an apartment in the Upper West Side. I was like, oh, I can't afford that. And she goes, you know, don't worry, we'll find out. We'll, you know, have a cat, so if you could take care of my cat, you know, we
Oh,
can work out a
perfect.
deal.
Oh,
And so it was like a really reasonable price. And I had 2 months to like look for a place and like settle down. And, you know, I went with like $500, and I said, if I make it, I make it. If I know, back to Miami, you know.
right, right.
Miami, New York was always not scary, but I guess coming from Miami, and when you have your big houses and
Right.
pools and, you know, all that kind of
Mhm.
space, to like move into this shoebox when you start
Yeah.
off, you know.
Or
I mean,
Matchbox.
luck. But then I was spoiled because, you know, I was staying in the Upper West Side in 82nd. So it was a beautiful one-bedroom apartment. And so it was a
Wow.
great introduction to the city. But, you know, right away, you know, one of my good friends from School of the Arts, Michael Sharp, was working at Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh,
And he
cool.
said, you know, come in to the wig and makeup, and I'll introduce you to Dale, the supervisor
Mhm.
there.
Wow.
And so, you know, I was all dressed up and brought my little book
Mm.
and resume. And, you know, at that point I had quite a bit of experience, you know,
Very
from
much
Santa
so.
Fe and School of the Arts. And so he's like, you know, your work looks great. You know, you have a great personality. Once you know, move to New York, you know, he gave me a list of people, you know, like a list of like 10 of the working designers of New York. And I remember I called one, and then I called the second one, and then I've never called the third person, because it just, from one thing to the other, and it was like Carmel was the first one that gave me the first gig
Ah.
in
Mhm.
Les Mis, you know.
Oh, yes.
And then when I called Leon Gagliardi, that he
Mhm.
was doing the Phantom, and
Okay.
on the side, you know, he had a bunch of shows, you know, set up through Broadway. But when I went to meet him, I thought it was going to be for Phantom of the Opera, and they were starting the new Matthew Bourne Swan Lake that came over
Mhm.
from the
Mm.
UK.
I
So
remember that.
that was my official first show on Broadway. Was this, you know, special limited, you know, of Swan Lake, and you know, everybody coming from the UK, being the first time on Broadway, everybody was so happy, and it was
Right.
such a beautiful, happy cast. You know, no complaints. Everybody was, you know, easy breezy. So it was a great first show
Mm.
to launch
Jimmy,
my
you're a
Broadway
legend.
career.
You're a legend. You are. I mean, I'm listening to the iconic shows and also
Yeah,
the regional shows,
yeah,
national shows, you know,
yeah,
from not only opera and theater, but then Broadway,
yeah.
which I'm sure led you to the Met Opera eventually.
Right. Yeah.
Um, wow.
Yeah, I was 15 years on Broadway. I even toured. I toured with The Lion King. A
Oh,
great, you know, it was the first national tour, so we had all those stellar people that came. They came back and starred on Broadway, but you know, we got them first. You know, that
yeah.
first national tour. Everybody's so close, and they're excited to put this show together. Julie Taymor, and the music was amazing. There's always, I loved it that they always wanted to be true to the South African culture and the African culture. So
Yes.
they always hired, I
Mhm.
don't know if it was like 8 to 10 people from
Mhm.
South Africa, just to have that South African sound
Yes.
authentic. And then they
Yes.
would teach it, and, you know, and, you know, getting to know these people from across the world. And they were just so happy to
Amazing.
be there. And because it was that first Lion King, first national tour, you know, we stayed a few months in each city. So you got to like rent an
Wow.
apartment, stay there, get to know the city,
Yes. And connect. Yeah.
and connect, and get to know people in the city. Connect all these great cities across America. So that was a great experience.
Coming up on Beauty and Gratitude.
Yeah.
Um, how is residing now in Barcelona? Like, what are you doing creatively to feed that part of yourself?
So stay tuned. Watch Live with Jesse and Melva right here on Solivity TV every Sunday at 5:30 Eastern.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame, living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Solivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Welcome to your new you with Aspire by Solivity. Virtual inspiration for your mind, body, and soul. With the help of at-home experts and celebrity guests, Aspire by Solivity provides tools to tap into the passion and purpose that lives within you. Find classes to educate and motivate you, from nutrition to your body and a whole lot more. So, take the leap. Start your new journey with Aspire by Solivity today. Sign up now.
You could really
Yeah.
teach a master class. You could really, I mean, in Barcelona, I know you reside there now, but you honestly could teach a master class that would do extremely well because
Yeah.
there's so much knowledge. I'm sure encyclopedic knowledge that we're not even getting into, but I know it's there. I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is residing now in Barcelona? Like, what are you doing creatively to feed that part of yourself?
Yeah, after those, it was like 15 years of Broadway, and then it was, at that point, we almost moved to Madrid. We had saved money. We had saved money to because Harry's sister was living near Madrid, Segovia.
Yeah. Harry Hancock, the artist, guys, the art's behind you, which this show will be paired together, just so you know.
Okay. His sister was living there, so at that point, being in New York for a while, having that opportunity to work and live in Europe officially with paperwork and all that,
Yes.
was exciting because before it was never possible. But I then get, the call for the Met. I was at Wicked for 6.5 years.
Wow.
So after being greenified for all those many years, it's like you wish for something different, and then you get to the opera, and then it's like different every night. We would do 28 different operas in the season, from 26 to 28, and 3 or 4 new ones, so it was an intense season. The blessing with that is that me and Harry would hit our summer vacation almost like to the day. We had the 2 months off together. So, it was a blessing to be able to travel. And that's when we did our trip to Cuba. We traveled around America on a van, Harry doing paintings,
I love
landscape
it.
paintings. So we spent almost 2 months traveling around America,
Mm.
you know, stopping at some friend's house and then just, you know, finding a place, you know, some
Yes.
campgrounds. We had like a minivan that we had an air mattress. So
I love
sometimes we
it.
could just stay there, or, you know, we'd
Mhm.
always find something. But we started off that tour in Atlanta. We
Mhm.
went to a health food seminar. It was like whole food.
Okay.
Uh, um, what was it called? Living Foods Institute. The Living Foods
Oh wow.
Institute.
Okay. Okay.
And we did 2 weeks there, like a little bit of a cleanse, you know, and
Mhm.
teaching you how to do your smoothies. And we met beautiful people there that we still keep in touch with.
It's amazing.
And yeah, that was our first trip, you know, before we started the tour. We started there. I took my Vitamix blender. I took
Mhm.
my trampoline. I was like,
Love it.
you know, at that point, you know, we wanted to see the other side of health, you know, because
Yes.
unfortunately, you know, Cuban food is great and tasty, but
Yeah.
there
You
really
can't have
is
it
not
every
much
day. Woo.
vegetables, you know,
Yes.
and so I was never really raised with salads and vegetables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it took, you know, you have to find out. And, you know, at that point I was old enough that I need to be responsible for my own health, and, you know,
Yes.
and I started juicing, and, you know, is juicing good? Is juicing bad? You know, and, you know, you go exploring those journeys of health. And
Wow.
we did that tour of America with, you know, going in health food stores, getting the vegetables, you know, and jumping, you know, my little mini trampoline, you know, to get some exercise just in case, you know, I didn't want to go too far and veer off, you know.
Mhm.
So it was an amazing trip, an amazing trip.
It's really about the journey, you know, the
Yeah,
journey not only of having parents from Cuba and growing up in Miami, and
yeah,
then traveling all over the country and eventually the world for the arts, which
right.
is a beautiful thing, especially as an artist. We know, I'm sure you know many struggling artists, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
but
especially now.
immensely talented, you know, just
Mm.
like if I had $1 billion, I would probably build homes all over the world and say, come here, paint,
I
sculpt, do whatever you
know.
want, and let's find you like opportunities around the world
Yeah.
to create
I mean,
and make money.
that was kind of part of our dream of this place here in Barcelona.
Mhm.
Barcelona came, you know, it was going to be my 20th year in New York, you know, so
Wow.
and Brexit got announced, and
Yes.
so we thought, oh, maybe, you know, if we don't do it now, we might not be able to.
Mhm.
So, and I was like, let's do it. Let's just jump. And, you know, Harry took a year off that last year to be starting all the paperwork,
That's
traveling
amazing.
to Spain, to Barcelona. And luckily his sister was here, and she had moved the year before.
Mm.
So we had a place to stay, home ground,
Okay.
and do trips back and forth. And then after that year was over, you know, we packed everything in a 20-foot container, send it on a
Wow.
ship, you know. I did a little trip down back to Miami, stayed with my family for a while before
Yes.
we made the
It's
big move. And then
wow.
we traveled with our little dog. He was like
Mm-hmm.
12 at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, a little bit higher. He passed away this almost a year ago now. But
Wow.
he was almost 17 years old. So like
Wow. What was his name?
little Nico. Nico.
Nico.
It was a Shiba Inu, the little foxy with those
Yes.
curly tails. Yeah.
Well, it's time to get a Spanish dog.
I know. Yeah, we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it.
Yes.
But like I was
Ni-
saying, you know, the idea of having kind of a Spanish residency, art residency in our
Yes.
house, you know, we have space, we have high ceilings, like 14 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
were thinking of lofting something, you know. Um, so it's still part of the possible future dreams, you know, of having a space that we could invite artists from all over the world.
Yes, even
Um,
writers, you know, I
yeah,
plan starting next year. I've written a few books, but starting next year, I told myself I'm taking a month every year to go somewhere
mhm,
and write. You know, whether it's Mexico City or Barcelona
right.
or Senegal, wherever it is,
Yeah.
I'm going to like dive into that for 1 month and either start a book or complete a book, you
Right.
know? So that's where my head is. And so art communities, I think is very important.
Yeah.
And a network. You're making me think of something. I'll do this off air. 'Cause
Okay.
I have all this space. I have a huge loft here, and I'm like,
Okay.
that's a good idea to have a good
Yeah.
network of just
Yeah, absolutely.
like, hey, go stay with my friend here, go stay with my friend there, and
Yeah.
create. You know.
Yeah. I mean, we
You know,
joined a group.
Yeah.
Yeah. We joined a group here in Barcelona called Raro,
Right.
which the letters stand for, like art residency from abroad. And it started in Argentina, and then Madrid was our second base. And so it just started here. So we've just signed up with them, a couple of months ago.
Love it.
It hasn't kicked off yet because, and then the pandemic happened and all that. But it's to open up your studios, to have people do residency for a week. They could stay here or not. They could, so we had the options if we wanted to open up our home, or they could stay, at an Airbnb or whatever. But it was being part of this collective of artists. And here in Barcelona, they had like over around 20 different artists, from ceramics to painters, sculptors, just all printmaking, So we've been to a couple of functions already, and we've had, people ask and stuff like that. But, once this thing started, it, just closed everything for a while. But it's nice to be a part of this collective.
Yes.
World global art network, like
community. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you could help somebody, eventually somebody will help you out in the future, and we could all enjoy life, like it's, New York was so intense, I went from doing the 8 shows a week to the 28 operas in a season. In 20 years, it was a lot of overtime, because when you do these shows,
I know.
we have to be grateful, one thing we have to be grateful for having a job and stuff like that.
But
and be
balance.
Grateful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was getting to, I didn't want to be burnt out, and I felt like this is a good time to like step off and enjoy this balance and, try to find a little bit of peace and take a break from 20 years of overtime, like, reset, do a little reset and see what comes, But, couldn't have done it, without my husband, Harry. That, when you have two creatives, it just makes a difference because you understand each other's needs, and, you're there to support each other. And that's what, being in a loving relationship is about.
Thank you for that. I needed to hear that. Thank you for that. Last but not least, what are you grateful for?
So many things. I mean, my parents, first of all, I was, I come from this big family, 14 on one side and 8 in my mom's side. So lots of cousins, but no one in my family had ever like gone away to school. Okay. So I really wanted to go like to the best school that was possible for wigs and makeup or costume design, for that theater. And it happened to be in North Carolina. That's, and they didn't understand, they kept saying, why don't you go to, FIU or, Miami Dade, your brother went here, and all, cousins went to, all these local schools. And I was like, yeah, but that's the best school, and I'd like to explore Miami. It's a great little paradise, but it's a bubble that doesn't feel like the United States. And I just needed to like live in the United States and see, being from Miami, I'm lucky to have been born there in this paradise city. I went to one of the first bilingual schools in Miami, so grateful also that they kept the Spanish, because I meet a lot of people, Latin Americans, that their parents, thinking that they were helping them, and say, they wouldn't teach them Spanish because they wanted them to integrate more with, your students. And it just didn't need to happen because Miami was so Latin, so Cuban at that time, that all my colleagues were all the same, Cuban Americans, then some Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, and then Venezuela, and then it just started piling up, and it's this big, beautiful Latin American melting pot.
Right.
that it's the beauty. It's like, yeah, it's like the capital of Latin America. It's how I see Miami, you know.
Yeah. Very
And
true.
then, yeah, I mean, you know, when you walk down Calle Ocho, all the
Mhm.
signs were in Spanish. You know, if you didn't know Spanish, you were,
Yeah. You better
you
learn some
know,
words.
you better learn some words. So, you know, grateful for my parents finally understanding, you know, and, you know, I remember my first year in college, she wrote me this big letter, you know, saying, I finally get it. I remember I had going to the dentist before I went away to school. And for whatever reason, the dentist clicked that we were having this issue. And she had a talk with my mom. I said, you know, this school gave me a scholarship. It's the best school. She's like, girl, you need to be proud of your son. You know, like
Yes.
nobody
Yeah.
in the family has ever gone away to school. You know, the fact that he wants to, he's a good kid, you know, doesn't get in trouble, no drugs, you know, like,
Yeah.
be blessed that you have somebody that wants to pursue a career.
Yes.
And, you know, once I, you know,
Mhm.
finally finished reading that letter, you know, it was like the safety net that, you know, they said, and, you know, whenever you're not comfortable,
Mhm.
you could always come back home.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You know what's beautiful, Jimmy, is that you followed your journey, you honored your journey, and you continue to honor your journey. And your parents were behind you and still are. So thank you so much. I got tears. I feel like Barbara Walters. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can we reach you, Jimmy? On Instagram, website?
Instagram is Jimmy Cortes, the bottom underscore Jimmy Cortes underscore.
Okay.
And then jimmycortez.com is a website, you know, just basically just as informational, just stuff that I've done. And
Perfect.
and then here, you know, at the Liceo, just today I found that they posted finally some work that I did for Liceo before the quarantine. I did photographs for the season coming up. We did for those posters that they post all over the city and the buses.
Right.
So they just got, you know, posted through the city. So we wanted to go out and search them out, you know, these big posters announcing the opera at the Liceo. So it's come round circle, full circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you both for doing this, and thank you. That's all I can say. I'm grateful for you, Jimmy, and I'm grateful for Harry. Thank you both.
Absolutely. And whenever this is over, you have a place here to come and do your writing or whatever you need to do.
Here too. Here too, guys.
All right.
I'm serious.
All right. Thank you. Take care, puppy. Ciao.
Thank you for watching Beauty and Gratitude with your host, D'Angelo Thompson on Celebrity TV, Fridays at 8 p.m. Celebrity Magazine brings you the best in inspiration on Celebrity TV. Check out our new shows. Mark your calendars for Celebrity Magazine shows by going to celebrity.com now.